And looks like the progressive MSNBC, CNN are obsessed this morning with international issues. And so I think for a time they will leave New York alone. And the previous few days in which there's been an obsession over Mayor Eric Adams and what I am calling the progressive left's sort of obsession about making him fall, making him resign. But I speed camera ahead. A video this morning appealing to black people, brown people, people in this city in the working class, people in the ethnic communities in Brooklyn, Bay Ridge, and Dyker Heights, and Canarsie, New Utrecht, all of these areas, Bedford-Stuyvesant, Williamsburg, Old Williamsburg, Bushwick, the old Bushwick. I'm appealing to you to remember that the elites, they don't care about you either. When you hear these folks, MSNBC and CNN and these progressive stations and these progressive publications, remember, they're not concerned with your well-being. They're not concerned with your advancement. And so Eric Adams, as far as they are concerned, is merely a proxy in their obsession with Donald Trump. I was doing an interview the other day after we had a massive turnout of clergy saying we want to continue to go forward with Mayor Eric Adams 4 more years. And strangely, when the reporter asked me a question, the first question she asked was, do you support the president? Now, I was confused for a second. I was stumped. I mean, here we are. We were in Bedford-Stuyvesant at a black church defending a black mayor. She had just gone to the rally. She saw what the focus of the rally was. It was to defend Mayor Eric Adams. And her first question to me was, do I support the president? Maybe she meant, do I support the mayor? But I had just spoken on the platform, so I doubt that she was confused about whether I supported him or not. But upon thinking about it, I realized, yeah, this isn't about Eric at all. This isn't about the mayor at all. This is about Donald Trump. This is about the obsession of the left with Trump. And what was Eric's crime? Simply to have the president of the United States look at his case through the Justice Department. I guess he had been looking at it before because he said months ago at the Al Smith dinner, what was done to you, Eric, was wrong. And since then, of course, the U.S. Justice Department has dropped the charges against the mayor. And to me, you would think that that would be the end of the story. We all felt that there was nothing to this story. He's not captured on any photograph with money. They certainly raided his homes and any properties he had. They found no gold bars. They found no stashes of cash, no incriminating documents, nothing. Some upgrades that he did, that he received years ago on flights when he wasn't even mayor. And a chief executive reaching out and saying, hey, I want to see, is the building of this important embassy, I'm the mayor of New York, I'm not the mayor of Chitlin Switch, Alabama. I'm not the mayor of Little Rock, Arkansas. I'm not the mayor of Boise, Idaho. I got embassies in this town. And all I'm simply doing is reaching out to see what is the status update so that I can talk to these people and help them manage their expectations. And for that, he's charged with a crime, corruption, quid pro quo. And I knew the people of the city, people who really understand law, that are not consumed with the war between the left and the right, they knew there was nothing to this case. And so it's now been dropped. But if you listen to people like Jumaane Williams, Brad Lander, and if you listen to the governor right now, you know our governor is under enormous pressure by some of these downstate politicians. They know they can't beat Eric at the ballot box. And so what they're hoping is to goad the governor into doing their bidding. That's what they're attempting to do. They're trying to goad the governor into doing their bidding and to remove Eric Adams. And of course, New York does empower the governor with the ability to do that, but it's never been done in 235 years. And I doubt very seriously that the governor of the state of New York will remove the mayor of the largest city in America because the charges against him have been dropped. That would be counterintuitive. It would not make any sense. And of course, I guarantee you it would become an international spectacle because we had a congressman here in New York many years ago by the name of Adam Clayton Powell. He represented Harlem. And Powell was a great legislator. Over 60 bills passed during his time in seniority. He was an outstanding congressman. He was a congressman at a time when there were very few blacks in the Congress. And so he really became like Black America's congressman as well as Manhattan, Harlem's congressman. But he was a very flamboyant guy. He'd been born with a silver spoon in his mouth, tall, good-looking guy, wealthy. He was a pastor of the largest church in Harlem. And he went to Congress and he was flamboyant. And the white Southerners, the white Dixiecrats, the Democrats who ran the Congress hated Powell. And so eventually they took his seat and took his seniority. And of course, it became an international story. And Powell, of course, won in court. He lost his seniority for Brooklyn, New York, Ocean Hill, Brownsville, Bedford-Stuyvesant. I see you asked that question. My point is this. Here's the point. Powell, upon having his seat taken, didn't just lay there. He immediately went to court and it started a process. And of course, he got his seat back. Eric Adams is not going to just lay there. He obviously is going to go to court. The federal government will probably, under this administration, probably make some move, either through court challenges or through federal funding. And so I would just urge and hope that the governor would say to New Yorkers, you know, we're going to have an election in the summer. I think if Mayor Adams is not to your liking, or if you're disappointed in his leadership, then we're going to settle this at the polls. And that will give Mayor Adams a chance to vigorously defend his good record. It will give the mayor an opportunity to be judged by ultimately the people who empowered him, and that's the citizens of New York. And that's the ultimate fair resolution to this so-called crisis. I don't see it as a crisis at all. I see it as, Jumaane Williams, the public advocate, quote unquote, if Mayor Adams steps down, Germani immediately steps into the seat of the mayor. He'll only have it for 90 days. But how many of you wouldn't want mayor, even if it's temporary, of New York City on your resume? Especially if you are a lifelong politician, okay? And so his criticisms, his cries, his hue and cries should be invalidated on the face of it because he has the most to gain. The next day, we'll be calling him Mr. Mayor. And so you can't listen to him. Brad Landers, the city comptroller, who the governor met with yesterday, he's running to be mayor. And certainly if Eric goes down, crashes out, flames out, is removed from office for governor, certainly puts him in a more favorable position because he doesn't have to run against an incumbent mayor. So in my view, that's a conflict of interest. He's too self-interested to give an objective analysis of about what's best for the city. And so I think, the city council chair, Adrienne Adams, the governor met with her yesterday. Well, everyone knows that the city council is overwhelmingly left, and that places great pressure on the otherwise, moderate city council speaker, but she'll have a revolt in her among us if she doesn't do their bidding. And so she wants the mayor gone because that'll satisfy the bloodlust of the progressives in the city council. So she has a vested interest in the mayor going. And then the governor, of course, met with Al Sharpton, and Reverend Sharpton and the mayor have been friends for many, many years. I'm not sure exactly, what her reason for meeting with Reverend Sharpton is. He's not an elected official, but I guess she felt as a community leader, she wanted to get a sense of what the community is thinking. I mean, the only thing I can say about that is, Reverend Sharpton has certainly many admirers, but he certainly doesn't speak for, the majority of black people. That mythical office of President of Black America, that doesn't exist anymore. I mean, you have a diversity of opinions among black people, so I don't know, I guess it would be instructive, but I'm not sure exactly how much the governor could get from that. My point is this. Maybe the governor had to show those who were, calling upon her, clamoring for her to come downstate. And, as I'm told in Albany, there was in do your job. And I think the governor's savvy enough to understand that, this is politics, all politics, and I'm staying out of this. And so I think we're in a good position in the city. I think after today, this issue will be resolved, and I want to make it clear that I support Mayor Eric Adams. I think he's doing an excellent job. We were joined the other day, 50 ministers from around the city. And these, of course, were imams and rabbis and Protestant, Catholic clergy. And so I think Mayor Adams has done a good job in spite of the fact that he's had the immigrant crisis, in spite of the fact that the city is damaged because of COVID. But I think he has the right instincts, and that is to build housing, which ironically the left has prevented from happening. Get guns off the street, which he has done. And let me just say, I spoke to a black leader yesterday, and this black leader had been very vocal about Eric had to go. And I had a conversation with the black leader, and I asked him, why are you against the mayor? And he went through this elaborate story about how he talked to the mayor about one of the units that the mayor had established. And he said, I texted him, I talked to him throughout his administration. Ultimately, he talked to the current police commissioner who was appointed by Mayor Adams, and that commissioner has removed that unit from operation. And what I was able to show the minister is, hey man, you just talked about 4 years of you having direct contact with the mayor. This is not a minister over a church with 5,000 people. This is not even a minister of a church with 500 people. This is a dedicated activist minister. And what I'm saying to black folks and brown folks in this city is that anytime you can say the mayor has met with you, talked with you for 4 years on an issue that's important to you, and then you ultimately got resolution of that issue through your police commissioner, his police commissioner, how can you not vote for someone like that? How could you turn someone like that out? It doesn't make sense. It makes no sense at all. And so what I'm asking the African American community is, don't be foolish. Yes, voters have power right now. And it seems to me that if voters use that power merely to say, we're going to punish Eric because he didn't do every single thing we asked for, then you're going to get a mayor and you're not going to have his cell phone number. You're not going to know the advisors around him. They're not going to recognize you or your years of service or your strategic importance in certain communities, because they're going to come from the ranks of the graduate schools. They're going to come from the ranks of communities outside of yours. They're going to be from Manhattan. They're going to be the elites, and you won't even be able to get into the City Hall complex. And so every community has to grow in knowledge. Every community has to become politically mature. And there are too many preachers and elected officials and stakeholders sitting on the sidelines saying Eric's got to go. And what I'm saying to you on this day, I think it's February 19th, that would be a great mistake for us to do that. And so I'm hoping that we will understand that there's absolutely no reason for us to turn away from Eric Adams. There's absolutely no reason whatsoever for the governor to remove him from office. We need to stay the course, build on the successes of this first 4 years, and whatever the mayor didn't get right in the first 4 years, another 4 years will give him an opportunity to improve that. That's the way the black community, the brown community of New York, working class people should be thinking. Mayor Adams is a New Yorker, but not just a New Yorker. He's someone who has lived in Brownsville, South Jamaica, Queens, has represented ethnic enclaves in Brooklyn. He knows your struggle. He knows what it means to try to carve out a living as an immigrant in this great city of ours. I think you stay the course with him. Oh, there are a lot of pretenders and aspirants. But an old saying in Harlem that woulda-bees, coulda-bees, and used-to-bees don't make honey. And I think that in an election season, people will say anything. They will promise anything. But the fact remains, Mayor Adams has a record that he's done a lot. And so we have to understand that. And we have to be fair and make an honest assessment of his leadership. I was thinking about the late, great Percy Ellis Sutton. Mr. Sutton was big on the African American community penetrating the system, especially in places where we had been denied. I remember he wrote a letter of recommendation for me to go to Harvard, and he was very proud to do that. And he said, "Mr. Minister, we have to penetrate certain institutions that we've been denied access to." He saw that as a good thing. And of course, in 400 years that New York City has existed, we have only had two black mayors. And so Eric Adams has penetrated the inner sanctum of City Hall in Gotham City, Gracie Mansion. And that's not something you give up. You don't just give that up. We did that once with David Dinkins. And we got 8 years of Giuliani. And those were very rough years for the African American community. And so many of the politicians today in City Hall and in the state legislature, they were kids then. They don't have any understanding that we've been here before. And so I'm hoping that those immature voices will not carry the day, and that people who've seen this movie before will say, no, 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 no. We're not going for the okie doke again. We're backing Mayor Adams, and we're going to do 4 more years in this city. And he can appoint more African Americans, more Latinos. You know, this man single-handedly has appointed the first black woman to lead the NYPD, the first Latino to lead the NYPD, and the first white woman. This one mayor. And so the list goes on and on and on in terms of the things that he's accomplished. So that's all I really wanted to say this morning. Please tune in to Conversations with Conrad weekly. It's a weekly podcast out of New York City. And you're going to learn a lot because you're going to hear a different perspective than you hear on the other stations. We're not from the right, but nor are we from the left. We are a common sense African American affairs podcast, and we are motivated, and we move from the sage wisdom and the mother's wit of our ancestors. And they were wise people. They brought us from slave ships to championships, from the outhouse to the state house to the courthouse to the White House. Their faith, their wisdom, their hope, and their prayers and their strategery brought us to this place. And that's what I rely on. Okay, I'm not a leftist. I do not subscribe to leftist politics. I don't care if it's from the radical white left or the copycat radical black left. I don't totally disregard leftist politics because I think in certain areas of the world, in the diaspora, democracies failed to incorporate people in Africa and Asia. Colonialism was brutal. It stole the resources, brutalized the people. And when colonialism was over, many of these African and Asian countries sought a relationship with the democracies, especially after World War II. But in that day, white supremacy ruled out because America, which should have been promoting democracy, was more interested in their kinship with the French. For example, Ho Chi Minh, after World War I, went to the League of Nations and wanted to become a democracy. But giving deference to the French, America did not embrace the fledgling democracy in Indochina, or what would later be called Vietnam. And before you know it, uh, Ho Chi Minh embraced communism. And of course, the Vietnam War is a matter of record. And then even in Africa, some of the African and Caribbean countries uh, got a better deal during the Cold War with the Russians. Um, and I don't begrudge them for that. I really don't, because I have an understanding of U.S. foreign policy, an understanding of U.S. history, and it has not been all good. And, sometimes when you have a bunch of white boys, particularly elites, their worldview is so narrow. David Haberstam, the great historian, wrote a book called The Best and the Brightest, and it's about that exact subject, how smart, smug white boys in the Kennedy administration ultimately messed up. And a lot of those countries became socialist, embraced communism. So I don't blanketly indict socialism, but when you compare it to the American system in America, our political institutions, our systems, I do not want to destroy our system today in favor of a socialist system, economic system, or political system. And I think that there are a lot of people who don't understand the American political system, the American economic system, and they're in America and they are enjoying the fruits of America, including our tradition of liberal institutions, our tradition of multiculturalism, pluralism, freedoms, etc. I think our system is best. And so in that regard, I do not subscribe to leftist politics, which seeks to move our economic system from a private property owning capitalist system, free market system, to a highly centralized, highly regulated socialist system. And I reject that. Okay. And in that regard, I reject leftist politics. Okay. You know, the Black Panther Party for Self-Defense, some of the movements in the 60s, Revolutionary Action Movement, these were young African Americans that had been born in the 40s and 30s, and they faced a lot of racism. And if you come up second class in a system where you're legally discriminated against and culturally discriminated against and lynched and hung, they came to the conclusion that America was incapable of treating blacks with dignity. And they lived their whole lives, their grandparents, their parents lived their whole lives in discrimination. I don't blame them for joining groups like the Black Panthers with the stated aim of overthrowing the United States government. I don't blame the Revolutionary Action Movement in that context of that day. They had no option that they could see. But there were people like Martin Luther King, who was born in the 20s, and he lived under that same system of racism and segregation. And for whatever reason, may have been his Christian faith, his ethics, his first-rate education, but I don't think it's that, because there are a lot of people that grew up in the church, had a first-rate education, some even more affluent than Martin Luther King, that didn't conclude that blacks could ultimately find justice and participation in American society. And so maybe it was just something internally something that he saw. He said, I've been to the mountaintop, I've looked over, and I've seen the promised land. And as it turns out, Dr. Martin Luther King was correct that through the civil rights movement, pardon me, through the Black Power movement, through the contribution of everybody, including the Panthers, Du Bois, Booker T. Washington, Fannie Lou Hamer, Malcolm X, Mr. Muhammad. I mean, everybody. Thurgood Marshall, Constance Baker Motley, Ella Baker, you name it. Through these incredible people, blacks ultimately were able to gain full participation in this country. And so young people today live in the freest country in the world. There are more opportunities for young black and Latino and minority people in this country than ever. And so I reject the left as just unnecessary and just wrong at this time, just backwards. As far as I'm concerned, they have a analysis that's 60 to 90 years old, and it's not applicable to today. But at the same time, I reject the narrow and doctrinaire right. There are people on the right that have a very myopic vision as well of America. And that is that America is a white country, a Christian country. And not only is that, at odds with the Constitution. Jefferson said he didn't care if his neighbor had one God, a million gods, or no God at all. It was of no concern to him. And so one of the great things about our Constitution is that Congress shall make no laws relating to religion. It's not a Christian country. It's just a country that Protestant Christians and Puritans found the right to express their religion. We're a diverse country. We always have been, and we always will be. But that's not to say that if you come to this country or you are a part of this country, that you should not embrace our political institutions, our economic institutions, and our overall American ethic. And immigrants have done that since the beginning of time. And what's so unique about America is we have always had the concept of hyphenated Americans, where people became fully American, and yet they were blessed to embrace and hold on to their heritage. Where are you from? Is that I'm from America. I was born in the United States. And so I'm just saying all these things to say that you got to have common sense. The right, sometimes they don't understand that. And Black History Month and diversity, all that's very important to the history of our country. And so there are crazies on both sides. And we need common sense, because no side has the truth. And we have to be able to synthesize the best traditions in American life. And that's what you get on this program, Conversations with Conrad. Intelligent conversations, reasonable conversations, and that's important. So I wanted to jump on today because the left, which, unfortunately, so many black politicians in New York, they're taking orders from MSNBC, as the Democratic Party is, CNN, the left, foundation money of the far left. And since they weren't obsessed with Eric Adams today, I wanted to jump on and reassure New Yorkers that it would be a grave mistake to let these people encourage us to say to hell with the progress blacks have made in the last 4 years, to hell with the progress Jews have made, women, Hindus, Sikhs, Latinos. None of that's important. Eric Adams was pardoned, or the charges were dropped on him by the Trump Justice Department. So he's got to go. I said to a former Democratic politician the other day, who said Eric should have gone to trial to prove that he wasn't guilty. I said, Negro, please. You want a black man to go into federal court and facing 45 years just to prove that he's innocent? When the feds have a 99% conviction rate, even the brothers in the street understand that the feds are going to convict you, and but they make a lot of mistakes. And the brothers in the street say, but I'll get that time back. And often they do, because of prosecutorial misconduct, prosecutorial error. And so, no, that's stupid. And the person who gave that advice, had it been him, he wouldn't have done it either. Truth is, Eric didn't do anything. And that's why these charges have been dropped. So let's stay with Eric Adams. 4 more years. Let's have some common sense. Let's wake up. Rome wasn't built in a day. Black political empowerment, it's not going to happen in a day. Incremental, but Eric plays a prominent role, not only in today, but in terms of our future. And so I hope that Hakeem Jeffries, who is a young black man from Brooklyn, I hope Jumaane, well, I don't have any hope that Jumaani's too self-interested now. Jumaani's playing checkers, but Hakeem is smart enough to play chess. And if you take down Eric Adams, or if you participate in the conspiracy to take down Eric Adams, you're undermining African-American political empowerment. And your uncle and all of our great leaders preached that we would have that. And so I don't know how anyone that comes up in that canon cannot be about maintaining, supporting, and strengthening that legitimate hope that people who've been so locked out that there have only been 2 black mayors in 400 years of history. The last point I want to make on that, and I'm out. For Eric Adams to have been the only mayor ever indicted is a joke on itself. New York produced Tammany Hall. Tammany Hall, the viciously corrupt New York political institution, produced a plethora of corrupt elected officials, Boss Tweed, etc. New York produced mayors like Jimmy Walker, a well-dressed Beau Brummel, a peacock. They say he'd come to work at 12 o'clock in a fine cravat and beautiful tailor-made suit, kick his feet up on the desk, had beautiful spats over his beautiful shoes, and say he'd spend a few minutes in the office going through the mail, and the only thing he would ask is, hell, are there any checks in here? And when there were, when he either got the checks or there were no checks, he would go out and spend the rest of the afternoon in fancy restaurants chasing women and chasing the elegant and upscale pursuits of life. He was never indicted. But Mayor Eric Adams, the only mayor in the history of New York City ever to be indicted. And black people are up in arms, brown people saying the mayor's got to go. Give me a break. Wake up. Wake up. Stop being so woke, which is a stupid left-wing statement, and have black consciousness be awakened to knowledge and stop dealing in slogans. That's it. Thank you. Have a great day. It's been my pleasure this morning, and we'll talk again soon. Thank you. live. I don't want to be